You're now listening to the Something Good Podcast Network. Please press any key to continue.
You don't know about the other side of the pyramid? The fifth side? It's called the floor, you dumbass. I just want to make sure he realizes there is a fifth side to the pyramid. And once you open your fucking mind of undefeated goddamn fairness. I know all of them, and I believe none of them, which makes me an expert. Welcome, everyone, to our new show with a new title, The Cryptid Conspiracy Cult. I'm your host, Chris Morrison, and sitting across from me is...
Quinn Riley.
Nice to have you back, Quinn.
Always a pleasure to be back.
And I'm glad that we actually found a name for this show.
Yeah.
Nice little done-up thing. Thanks to Alex Stiff of Something Good For You.
Good alliteration.
and we were surprised it wasn't taken.
Yeah, I'm shocked too.
Yeah.
Damn.
So, it's just like the triple C, you know.
All C, no P.
All C, no P. So we got that set up now. If you're in the Discord, we now have a sub Discord in there for everything you want to look at and ask us questions. Today, we will be discussing probably the biggest conspiracy
in the modern day.
In the modern day, yes. We briefly talked about it on our first episode. We're just going to be doing a deeper dive into the September 11th 9/11 attacks.
Dun, dun, dun.
So going back to our last episode, Quinn, you said you lived in New York during the time.
Yes, I did. I was actually in kindergarten. That's kind of dating myself, but I was in kindergarten at the time, and it was just a normal Tuesday. That's the fucked up thing. It's like, any other story that you'll ever hear of tragedy, it's always a normal day during the week, but it was a normal Tuesday. Got to school at like 8:30. Started, class at 9 o'clock in the morning. Everybody's just talking, playing, blah, 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 kindergarten class. Yeah. Next thing you know, about 9:30, 10 o'clock, all these parents slowly start rushing in, and kids are slowly being taken out of classes. Not just ours, but all the different classrooms throughout our hallway. So how the classroom is, I can look straight down and just see long, probably about 200-foot hallway with about 8 different classrooms and just people constantly coming out.
Just a corridor.
Oh yeah, long corridor.
Yeah, we stayed in school for the entire time, for the entire day. I can't remember if we went back the next day or not. But yeah, I was in 6th grade when it happened. Like I had said on the original podcast, our first intro to conspiracy was. That's when I learned about the word terrorism from a teacher, not from the news, because she lived in North Ireland. She was Irish, and she had a lot of things to say about certain people that she was trying to like keep to herself. But there's some things, but like when we're talking about World War I, she's just talking shit about the Russians and the British people, and why good thing these countries aren't countries no more. Kind of,
yeah.
She had that kind of railing around that time because we started school at 8:15, and it wasn't probably. It was right before 9 o'clock, before the intercom came on. Everybody turn your fucking TVs on. We're not changing classes or anything today.
Wow.
You'll be hosting your class for the rest of the day. And that's when, 5th to 6th grade is when you start, going out of your classroom and going into other classrooms.
Yeah, so, going to see your friends, all that fun stuff.
Well, not just that, but it's just like, you're going to this room for English, you're going to this room for math.
See, I was behind the game when I was in 6th grade. I stayed in one class and was like, oh shit, I'm not even supposed to be here. I'm not ready for this.
Yeah. But going into it, there are quite a few conspiracy theories on here. We're just be going through the top ones that we all know and love.
Okay.
Alex had some knowledge of this. He had done some research, but I just went back through my research this morning. Have you ever heard of Alicia Head?
It sounds
or the name Tanya Head.
Tanya Head sounds a lot more familiar.
Okay, so she's pivotal in the post 9/11 attack. She was someone who took over. How do you say it? The 9/11 survivors association. She became the president. The fun thing about Tanya Head, though, however, is she had never been to the United States prior to 9/11. Yeah, so she's from Spain. She was in a debilitating car crash that left her with a kind of a massive scar. But she had joined a support group for survivors of 9/11. And she had told this radical fucking story that she was on the South Tower, 51st floor, right where the plane hit. She was able to get out because she had this gnarly scar from her shoulder to her arm, and she was like, no, I survived. And then she started nitpicking from other people's like cherry picking from other people's stories of survivors that were meeting constantly post 9/11. Of course, survivor's guilt for a lot of these people. They're going into great detail of why they shouldn't be alive. And she created this elaborate story. And it kind of came to a head much later on after the Victims Association. After the Victims Association came along and wanted more answers about the story. And she was a grifter. She came from money from Spain. She's actually a Spanish-born citizen. And she had talked about how her fiance had died in the tower. The thing was, she kind of lucked out because the family of the fireman didn't really know who she was until she had said something out loud that it was a wind romance kind of thing, and they got married in Hawaii and all this bullshit. But she could never produce pictures. She could never produce this, and this, and she would always get like emotionally upset trying to tell her version of the story when people started getting a little too close, and everyone's like, oh no, leave Tanya alone, she's got PTSD, why the fuck would you even say that? And you think about that now, like, who the fuck would lie about that?
I thought you were about to say, who the fuck doesn't have PTSD to some degree?
But like the amount of balls on this woman too, because another part of this story is that people who disappeared during 9/11 who turned up later on.
I had heard actually quite a few different stories of that. Even children that were in the daycare center there, some were deemed dead but actually survived. I mean, people that were on the higher floors just below the flames, they were thought to be dead. Of course, the movie World Trade Center talking about the Port Authority cops that got trapped under the building.
Yeah. Well, these are people who were believed to have been at work that day who never went to work that day.
Oh shit!
These are people who basically found the opportunity and ran, because at the time of 9/11, think about around 2001, the NSA isn't as active as we think it is today. Homeland Security is actually just part of FEMA.
Yeah.
So a lot of this is going in and out, and it's just a perfect storm of disappearing yourself.
Yeah,
like people just walk away from their whole lives. Like we hear about stories like that all the time, especially when you're like ask Reddit or something like that. Hey, tell me a story. He's like, oh, I abandoned my family one day and never came back for 6 years.
I left for cigarettes and it took me 6 years to find them.
And what's crazy is, if they didn't find a body, you're still actively missing. And the funny thing is that that people don't realize is I could leave tomorrow and not talk to anyone ever again. I'd be marked as missing. But if they were to ever find me, it's not a crime.
Well, this is also pre-Patriot Act, too, where we could keep tabs on people in a lot of ways. Yeah.
And, going into 9/11 itself, just a quick little timeline. On the morning of September 11th, 4 flights took off. These includes Flight 111, which struck the North Tower at 8:46 a.m., not less than 30 minutes later, Flight 175 struck the South Tower. I saw that live.
I did too. Yeah. I was already home by that time, and when I saw that second plane hit it actually on CNN of all things.
33 minutes later, Flight 77 struck the Pentagon. And then at 10:03, Flight 93 struck the ground at 10:03 a.m.
in Pennsylvania.
And the reason I wanted to mention Tanya Head first, because I find that one the most fascinating.
Right.
Because now she's disappeared. She has gone off the step. No one knows where she is. There's a great documentary that includes interviews with the people that were close to her. It's called the person who wasn't the lady who wasn't there.
I've seen that name floating around. I didn't even realize. I didn't put the two together.
Yeah. So. And it was a long con. She would be there. She spoke at the 9/11 memorial. She made friends with the mayor and governor of New York. She made friends with these people, and they're like, "Thank you for all the time you spend on making sure this thing works." And she had embezzled a little bit of funds here and there,
right?
But all under the guise that she was a survivor.
That's fucking crazy, and that's even crazier though, considering the mayor of New York at that time was fucking Rudy Giuliani.
Yes, and
that's what trips me out a little bit.
And it continued on after his governorship or mayorship. Like even the next mayor that came through, she was lying to that motherfucker's face too.
Really, Mike Bloomberg? She was like, holy shit! Wow, dude, I didn't know it went that long.
her scam was very intricate.
That is intricate.
What got her, though, she created a fantasy tale, a little bit too out of her comfort zone, and they were able to catch her on a slip. She was actually, people that were getting a little bit too close were actually being annexed out of, or exiled out of survivor groups. These are people who survived the 9/11 attacks. These are people that were there, and she, claimed when she's like the president of the charity or whatever, she dips.
What the fuck?
Yeah, so just a nice little rabbit hole for people listening to just go down to check that documentary out, The Woman Who Wasn't There.
Yeah.
And it's done with really, really cool style. There's a lot of animated stuff in there.
Hey, that's fine. I always loved stories like that anyway.
Yeah. But yeah, so all 3 attacks seem to have happened within an hour 15.
Roughly, yeah, about an hour and a half, hour 15.
Yeah, so what we do know is 19 Arab-born men are traced to the attacks claimed by Al-Qaeda. What do you know about Al-Qaeda?
Well, Al-Qaeda, I know, kind of came as a splinter group from the Mujahideen as well as the Taliban. They are, I want to say inadvertently, but they are CIA trained because during the 1980s, Soviets invaded. We needed to teach the people of Afghanistan how to defend themselves. We didn't want to have, another situation like Vietnam or even like Cuba where we lose another ally somewhere in a vital place. And from that, Osama bin Laden kind of formed the group. He came from, was it royalty from Egypt, or was he from just a very
He's from
rich
a prominent family.
Yeah.
All his brothers and sisters all went to Oxford.
That's right. I remember hearing about that, and I know he was extremely educated himself.
Which, if you think about, a lot of your Arab dictators, presidents, prime ministers all went to a leading English school,
and they love Western culture too, which is the funny thing.
A great example of this is the Last King of Scotland, which is the story of Idi Amin, who the whole title is derivative of when he went to school in Oxford. He is the last king of Scotland because it's Oxford in the story was basically for royal English born people, mainly Scotland, but it goes into that whole detailed dive of they just want to know how to get power quickly, so they went to a college and learned how to do it in like third world countries.
Without having to read Machiavelli.
and like going in for the Mujahideen, especially, with the proxy wars of the 80s. If you've ever seen the movie Rambo 3.
The Taliban are the good guys.
Yes, there's actually a nice little epilogue paragraph at the end of that. This movie is dedicated to the strong fighting people of Afghanistan.
That cracks me up because looking back at it, you're like, ooh, that shit did not age well at all.
It did. He was like, yeah, get some. Just make another one called Full Metal Helmet.
Full Metal.
It's just about the invasion of Afghanistan and Iraq.
Oh my god, that's perfect. You know what? I'll fund that.
I actually I know some people who were in the military at the time of 9/11, and a friend of mine.
I do too.
Who I spoke to around this time, he said he was in the military at the time in boot camp, and they never told him until after he got out.
That actually happened to my cousin John too.
He didn't know 9/11 happened at all.
He didn't even know until he was at a basic, and then when he was getting ready to deploy, that's when he found out all the news. And there were guys that were, these are Marines. There were dudes full on crying and shit, but they didn't know anything about it. It was a shock.
Yeah, and it is a shock because the United States was attacked by a foreign entity for the first time since probably 1941.
Yeah,
and even then, it's like, what the fuck just happened?
Yeah, because the only other attack up until that point was in 1993 with the bombing in the parking garage.
Yes, so the Mujahideen had splinter groups. They ended up getting Al-Qaeda, Taliban. And in 1993, the bombings in February of 93 was traced also to these new 19 men who did the 9/11 attack. They had traces and relatives that were part of the original attack in 93.
Really?
Now, from April of 98 to the time of September 11th, there was a group of people working within the government, from the CIA to the intelligence, basically the intelligence organization, who were trying to track some of these guys down because they heard there was, before this, there was chatter about an attack on the United States, which people don't know. This happens every day. There's probably 30, 40 attempted attacks in the United States constantly. Before 9/11, even after 9/11. And based on their incompetence of what happened in 93, they worried that, with a stronger subset of guys, younger people, who are Americanized, basically.
They could blend in, have sleeper cells just sitting here waiting.
And what's crazy is this isn't the only group that were planning to hijack planes. So there were actually Aryan Brotherhood members who were training to take planes. There were people in eco-terrorist groups who had links to PETA, who were all trying to. There are a lot of local terrorist groups,
homegrown terrorism,
who had tried to do the plan the same thing, but after 9/11 happened, their plans kind of fell through because of what happened with the TSA. TSA became a rampant area of decline in the 90s, not because of federal funding, but because of the resource itself. With the expansion of airlines and the expansion of who can run an airline, United, American Airlines, Delta, it became such a strain. And now you're asking one guy who searches probably 100 people to search 200 people in that same shift. So it becomes kind of a negligence on our end.
Heavier workload because there's more and more people flying each and every day.
Like you work in a warehouse.
Oh yeah.
Now, I used to work in the back end of a warehouse and packing, and if you fuck up, you fuck up.
Yeah.
But if you imagine fucking up 200 times, and there's 19 get through.
You have to live with that for the rest of your life.
Yeah, and a lot of people a lot of that doesn't get said in the story of telling of 9/11 is the people who let them through.
Yeah.
And didn't know no better. But let's get into the conspiracy part of this.
Hell yeah.
So
let's rock and roll.
My favorite one so far, because I went back and read a lot of these, is the Tower 7 collapse, which is the lower building that was demolished basically, or destroyed during 9/11. So you had Tower North and Tower South, but you had Trade Center 7, which was the smaller building that ended up collapsing,
which coincidentally had the FBI office and tons of documents on God knows what.
Yeah, and a lot of that conspiracy stems from, hey, the Fed kept interest rate information. There were a lot of backstock information on foreign nationals who live within the United States on finance.
Of course.
Hell, even the Wall Street stopped until September 17th. So you're talking about 6 days of no trading
at all. I mean, that New York, the entire state, I mean, just to kind of put it into perspective, it really became a police state. I mean, being taken out of my class and going outside, you felt like you were in a fucking movie.
Yeah.
You had cops on the street, multiple cops on the street. You had guys in full SWAT gear. Bomb squad was always somewhere around the corner, figuratively speaking. But there was such a tension that people would go outside, kind of look over at each other, ask one another, "You okay? Is everything all right?" The slightest bit of suspicious activity would warrant you getting put up against a wall and fucking arrested. It happened in front of me.
Yeah.
I was in a restaurant one day, and this gentleman just he was a Arabic gentleman, just happened to be speaking with his wife, and he spoke in his native language, and table beside him looked at him. Next thing I know, the fucking cops show up because I guess they said something to one of the wait staff. Mm-hmm. Cops show up, take him outside, and he's screaming and pleading with them like, "What the fuck are you doing? Like, I haven't done anything." Next thing you know, as soon as he's outside, they're putting him against the wall, spreading his legs, and I can only imagine what he went through following that, because they put him in the car and drove off. His wife and kids were screaming.
Yeah.
There was a lot of anti-Arab sentiment throughout that time.
The Islamophobia was high.
Yeah.
My dad said it to me once. He said, before 9/11, I didn't really think about it.
Yeah,
and then he said you started noticing a lot of Arab people in your community. And he's like, my dad said, not in really a negative light. He's like, but you noticed that very quickly.
It was more prevalent following that.
Yeah. Like my dad was in the Army. My dad, everybody was fucked. Like,
yeah, no, for real.
I think that goes into just a racial thing down south, is especially for the newer people born past 2000 or past 95 realize that it's not a white black thing, it's a poor rich thing.
Yeah. And
I actually got on a friend of mine's ass one time. He was from Michigan. He came down here because he thought it'd be a little bit more tuned to his way of thinking. And I'm just like, your bigoted ass
is not welcome
here. Down here.
No, of course
not. We all grew up together. We all got shit on together. Hey, motherfucker, are you eating today?
Yeah.
Do you need $1 to buy lunch? Like, it's that bad? It was that kind of type of situation growing up, especially in my school. But going into just the thick ofness of the the police state you were talking about.
Yes.
Alex Jones wrote a book literally called 9/11, Martial Law 9/11, Rise of the Police State.
Yes.
And that's where Alex Jones really got his start, not just from InfoWars, but just his kind of Inquirer, sun lighting,
Well, him and Joe Rogan were actually in the early to mid, actually throughout the entire 90s, were almost on the same wavelength in terms of their reporting when they were doing, reporting.
Yeah. And I remember seeing some of the people that would talk growing up talk about the conspiracy, and I'm just like, who allowed you to talk? I don't be like that, but like, we used to think of fake news as the Inquirer or the Daily Press or something like that.
Yeah, the shit that's out there.
Yeah, but now these people are walking among us and saying that shit out loud. They're saying the bad part out loud.
It's like, it's kind of like how they get mad about PC language, but then you hear people on Fox News saying, oh, we're not lying, we're just telling you alternative truths.
Truthiness,
yes.
You remember that fucking
yes,
statement?
Of course. Of course.
Truthiness. It sounds true, don't it? God, I miss it when he did that show. That show was so solid. But going into one of the theories here, or just not just before we go to the theories, what triggered this? The reasons for this being triggered, and it's a long list of things.
Yeah.
One is the U.S. supports of Israel. One is the American soldiers stationed in Saudi Arabia. As Bin Laden said in an interview, U.S. soldier too close to Mecca.
Yeah.
And I kind of see where he's coming from on that, but it's like they're an ally.
Yeah.
We're not invading Saudi Arabia until we fucking have to.
And on top of that too, there would be no benefit for either country considering the business agreements.
Yeah. And another one is the embassy bombings of 98 in Kenya.
I totally forgot about I totally forgot about that.
So
bombing.
during the Clinton administration, there was a lot of upscale in our deficit. There practically was no deficit under Clinton because they were able to get the budget, and the people he had were able to facilitate the needs of the people a little bit better than after like George Bush, who
fucked it all up.
Well, like I understand the Fed was responsible as well. The State Department, the military spending had skyrocketed again from
as compensation for the attack. Yeah,
but like from 1980 to 1988, the military budget was so fucking high and massive that contracts were going out willy nilly, and now this was just like an affirmation of let's do it again because we can. Because we have people we have veterans of Desert Storm who are able to tell us stories who are less than a decade old now.
Shit, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? You got a guy who fought at 25. He can come back at 35, 36 and be like, hey, man, you want to be dropped back in the fucking dust again?
And he's fucking seasoned. He knows the area well. It's kind of like the young guys going into Nam and having those slightly older guys that have been in country for like 5+ years.
Yeah. And want to get the fuck out.
Yeah.
But some conspiracies, kind of, when we think about the 9/11 conspiracy, we think mainly just about the Twin Towers, but not to mention the Pentagon, which was also attacked
with little to no footage.
Yes, so that's the part of the conspiracy I really like is because the Pentagon didn't have a lot of cameras directed toward the building, and I kind of figured out this one very quickly because did you ever see the movie Loose Change about 9/11?
Bits and pieces. It's been a little bit of time.
I found it in 2008, 2009. At the college I was going to in a DVD case, just a DVD set on the front desk. It was like because the reception, like you had the student center, or you could play ping pong, sit down,
right?
Collaborate with some people in a group, and then when you open the doors, there was a table, and people would be like, "Hey, this is an old British book. I couldn't resell it to the bookstore. Whoever wants it could take it."
Yeah,
and you'd find all this other stuff like pamphlets, everything. And on it was a CD and said Loose Change. So I took it and watched that shit on a computer at the school. I'm just like, this is a 9/11 conspiracy movie.
Like, what the fuck?
I had heard about it before. I never really saw it because no major network was actually playing it. And you would have to have, like, in 2008, 9/11 is still kind of fresh in a lot of people's minds.
Yeah.
So I watched it. And I was like, this is the dumbest fucking thing I've ever seen. And I watched Bowling for Columbine.
Oh my God. I've totally forgot. You just unlocked a memory I repressed.
Yeah, that's another guy I would like to talk about.
Oh, Jesus.
Michael Moore.
See, he's an interesting character.
He's just a leftist Alex Jones.
Yeah, you're not wrong. You are not wrong at all.
That's all. because he had talked about people not locking the doors in Canada. I was just like, shut the fuck up. But yeah, so going to the Pentagon one specifically, the lowest tier conspiracy theory was a missile had struck the Pentagon.
That actually, I'm shocked that wasn't higher up, because I've heard of quite a few more people mention that, because in the footage that you have from, I think it was the guard post, it was just somewhere at the front of the building, you only see the tail end of whatever the hell it was, and it was also the explosion that followed.
Yeah, and I like to remind people, like, in 2001, technology is nowhere near it is right now. And if you think about, in hindsight, hey, I got all these cameras around the Pentagon, they didn't catch anything. It's because those cameras aren't pointed at the fucking Pentagon. They're pointed outside the Pentagon, because that's where the fucking threat's coming from.
That's true.
There's no reason to think that the highest military base next to Langley, Virginia,
is going to have cameras.
It's going to have cameras facing inward. There's no reason to. It's like is somebody going to jump out the fucking window?
Yeah.
Of a Pentagon? No, because they're all military leaders. They're all. If anything, you're going to get shot in the head inside the halls of the Pentagon.
It's probably buried underneath.
But a lot of it is we don't see the damaged wings. We don't see that, and it's just like that's part of NTSB's footage of the wings breaking when it bounces off the ground and strikes the Pentagon. And I just love the idea of people saying it was a missile that does such little damage, because if you notice, it's just a cave-in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It wasn't like a explosion where things would go everywhere. There would be a much larger crater, for example. Even a surgical strike has a big explosion.
And a lot of their on the fact end of this was a lot of people were identified who had boarded Flight 77. Their bodies were all over the place, because it's basically a can full of bodies.
Yeah.
That you're checking out a building at high speed. So I think that conspiracy is pretty well off, just because of the idea of adding insult to injury to kind of a country that feels a little bit too overpowered sometimes.
Yeah.
And that's another part of this I like is the government incompetent, or is the government overpowered? And no one seems to understand that it's kind of in the middle.
I was about to say it's very much both. Even if they're overpowered, there's still room for incompetence, no matter it's human error.
Yeah, the facilitation of idiots.
Yeah,
goes a long way. And I wanted to ask you, what do you think happened?
Do you mean in general, or
in general, like the story of 9/11?
Well, when I think about it, I feel that there could have been grave incompetence. If you're having overworked employees, having to manage God knows how many people coming through an airport every single day, and especially that time in the morning, I could see people allowing individuals that would be a red flag to anybody in the NSA or even the CIA or the FBI. However, when you're overworked like that, you can definitely let some unsavory characters through. In addition to that, I also think that we were focused on the wrong things at the time. I don't think we were able to connect the dots fast enough.
Yeah.
But then, on the other hand, while I kind of see it from a sympathetic point of view, I also think about how the Rockefellers brought in steel to build the World Trade Center at one point. They had a hand in the steel companies that were operating there. Accompanying that information, there was also the insurance policy that was taken out on those buildings. Do you mind going a little bit into that, just for the sake of...
Yeah, so the guy who owned the buildings actually got screwed because the insurance policy said basically like act of God type situations, which is very odd for a skyscraper in
the middle of Manhattan. Yeah,
probably one of the largest cities in the world, and not a giant target. Now, a long time ago, the Empire State Building was hit by a plane.
Yep, in the 1940s.
Yes, and not much happened.
No.
It was just foggy. And a B-52 just flew into it.
I don't care about the plane hitting the fucking building. You're going to work.
There was no remote working. It's like, operator. I'm trying to get Mr. Beasley down the road.
I see you've been working on your transatlantic accent.
Man. Hey, what are you doing? But so I remember talking to some friends of mine in college about this. The idea of a plane striking a building and then someone saying it's an act of God. And I'm just like, because that came up during the conversation.
Damn, we said Jesus take the wheel, but god damn, I guess he can't fly planes.
He became Muhammad, apparently.
Right.
Muhammad just dips on the last class of landing and says, fuck it.
Well, you know what's fucked up about that? Muhammad Atta, it's bad that we say Muhammad too, but Muhammad Atta, one of the ringleaders of the entire group that went on there, supposedly was taking... kind of goes into your other indication of dictators being educated in Europe. He was taking classes for flight in, I believe it was either Belgium or it was Holland. And he did leave the classes after, or like before they started teaching him how to land. He just wanted to know how to take off.
Yeah. And, you know, you're talking about 4 planes, you know, taking off and 19 terrorists among them. Not so evenly built, but the way they were able to take the plane, fly the plane, and, you know, end it all. Just the nonsense aspect of it kind of bothers me. The amount of dedication it would take to do something like that on a high level is no different dedication taken here when it comes to people like doing stupid shit on a domestic level.
Oh yeah, of course.
But I just the amount of, I'm not saying it's a good thing, or I don't want it to sound like a good thing, but the amount of resolve you would need to have to kill yourself
in the sake of that,
in the sake of some of these weak ass fucking reasons.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? Like, because some of these reasons are just fucking ridiculous. And, but going back to the insurance plan on the towers, I remember that guy. It took him years to get that shit back.
Jesus Christ,
the guy who owned the building, because he was being investigated too, because he had ties to Israel and Middle East.
Holy shit!
And people talk about like the Muslim part of the attacks.
Of course,
and
it's
you're always going to see the kind of the Islamophobia, but there's also the aspect of, well, I don't know, and who the fuck do I really know these people? And that kind of goes into the whole domestic terrorism itself on our end of non Middle Eastern, non-European Americans. Is, can we trust those people? And I think it kind of set off the damage that it was supposed to do, which was to divide.
Of course.
And kind of press the government a little bit further than they needed to go to create things like the Patriot Act, expand FEMA, stuff like that.
Increase funding for local police departments, military spending.
Yeah, so, coming down here, have you noticed the difference? Like, I don't know. You said you were from like Long Island.
I did go to the city from time to time, though, too. There was a very big difference in police departments.
And I know you were pretty young, but the idea of cops, of how they were treated before 9/11 opposed to after 9/11, is a big difference.
Yeah.
Because I remember the word hero being thrown around a lot fucking more.
A lot more.
Yeah.
It was interchangeable. And
what I love is how quick people's beliefs can change. We're seeing that now live, especially in the last 2 days of recording this episode. A lot of crazy stuff's going on with a certain party. But I remember growing up and watching people like my dad's age being like, back the fuck up, cop.
Yeah.
Yeah, like being a very...
Both of my parents.
Yeah, but confrontational with the police because they were being confrontational.
Yeah.
Mistrust for the police. And, if we think about it, it's kind of fucking ironic nowadays, but the invention of NASCAR, which is a big Southern and Western thing, which is all delved on the basis of, we got to get away from the fucking police.
Because we got to move this moonshine.
Yeah, that's basically the story of NASCAR. But now it's the Blue Lives Matter.
It's so ironic.
And it's just like, I love outlaw country and I love obeying the law. It's just like, get fucked.
It's kind of like what I overheard a coworker of mine say. I support unions, but I ain't gonna let no commie take my guns. And I kind of stopped, and I'm sitting here going, do you not realize the first rednecks were basically communists that were fighting against a massive company that was trying to achieve autonomy? I mean, the coal industry, countless other things as well.
I was looking at it today. Someone posted Ayn Rand
quote,
God. And I'm just like, the subtlety of selfishness by this bitch, this hermit woman.
When you can,
I get it. Rush makes great songs, but fuck,
dude, that is that's a read right there. Any Ayn Rand book, like Atlas Shrugged, I could not.
And shit like that, no.
Fountainhead was a little bit more palatable in short bursts.
Yeah, but like the investigation into the guy who owned the Twin Towers and the buildings around it. The reason he fought so hard, they were going to arrest him for ties. Because
Al-Qaeda and all that?
Well, to Al-Qaeda, to Middle Eastern groups who were donating to Al-Qaeda, which one of them is the Saudi family.
Yeah.
Because they wanted to keep a civil war going in Afghanistan. Because the Mujahideen had pretty much disbanded, and the more radical members created, Al-Qaeda, trained by the CIA, created Al-Qaeda, and then the Taliban. And then you had the Islamic Front of Afghanistan later on.
Yes.
Which kind of grew into the whole ISIS thing.
Yeah, that's 100%.
Islamic State of Syria, stuff like that, and we get a lot of interchangeable groups that under like the media point of this, like brown people.
Yeah, of course.
The flag of brown people need to get got, and it's like Jesus Christ.
Yeah, what the fuck?
We didn't have any Muslims in my school growing up. I had a few Jewish kids, but living in like the rural part of North Carolina, you're not going to see anything other than Baptists and Presbyterian and Methodists. It
wasn't. There were a few people, like a couple of kids that were from the Middle East. I'm trying to remember. I think one of them was from Yemen, and I think the other boy, he was from. Oh God, I want to say it was either Iran or it was. Kuwait, yeah. It was one of the two, but it wasn't really common. No, we had a lot of Jewish kids that were there, but that's also because, there's a fairly large Jewish community, especially on Long Island and in New York City.
Yeah. And I think that kind of plays into like the what do you call it? The stereotype of New York.
Yeah.
It's filled with a bunch of self-deprecating Jews.
And those goddamn liberals.
Yeah. And another part of this was, we have the theory of a missile striking the Pentagon. We have the theory that World Trade Center 7, the building adjacent to Tower North, was a demolition. Another one is Flight 93, United 93, was shot down.
I had heard a lot of stories about that.
Not brought down by the passengers, which... That's another thing I don't like about when people talk about this stuff in movie form.
Oh, God, yeah.
So when you have like a tragedy and they make a movie about it and it's starring Mark Wahlberg, you just don't like it.
Immediately. I don't understand why for like 5 years he was doing movies like that.
Well, he did Horizon, Deepwater Horizon, Patriot Day, which was the Boston bombing.
Fucking Lone Survivor.
He was doing a lot of those. And... I see those tales as just like versions of propaganda.
Very much so. It's I see it as like the Americanized version of like films that you would have seen in Nazi Germany in the 40s. Something to paint our people in the best possible light, even in the face of tragedy.
Yeah, and a good version of this is there's like a couple lines of dialogue in that Deepwater Horizon where you see Mark Wahlberg going to work.
Yeah, and
you can see like signs of the stuff kind of cracking around. Like the breakdowns of communication and stuff like that, and then bust, and it's just like, yes, I understand that the people on the oil rig are not having a good day. I understand that people died, but they didn't have to.
No, they didn't.
The movie doesn't clarify why they didn't have to, which is if you did fucking maintenance on a goddamn oil rig,
you need to get it done now. Yeah. Don't put that shit off. That's your fault. That's not their fault.
I think like that's a good parallel when they tell stories about World Trade Center with Nicolas Cage. Yeah, you remember that movie?
That was actually the movie I was referencing earlier, with him and Michael Pena.
And then you had Flight 93, which didn't really have a lot of...
It was United 93. You were right the first time when you mentioned it, yeah.
And, these movies I almost refuse to watch because it's like you're propagandizing the dead people who were there.
I don't know if it was the region I was in, but they kept promoting the fuck out of out of United 93. I almost said it too. Out of United 93. Like, it was... Every other commercial was a trailer for it when it came out.
Yeah. And some other people that kind of exploited the industry of this tale of 9/11 was, in a lesser extent, Toby Keith. because he was able to give back to the military a little bit more. But then you have people like Alan Jackson, who really made their money off that shit.
Yeah.
Because he went from down to the Chattahoochee to Remember When.
Yeah. Yep.
Or Where Were You?
Yeah, where were you when
they built the ladder to heaven? South Park has got the best.
I love that episode. I was just about to say it was right there.
I think it's funny because like the way the way we look at about 9/11, they always say, "Hey, remember, never forget," kind of.
Don't ever fucking forget.
And it's just like, motherfucker, we forgot about the Alamo. We'll forget about 9/11.
Yeah, dude. Like we forgot all about the Alamo. We forgot about. We don't really talk about the Revolutionary War. We don't really talk about the Civil War. We don't touch on parts of history. It's like our culture is only going to remember one thing, and it seems like it centers around that.
And a lot of that is just, the lack of, I think, just teachers.
Yeah.
I was lucky. When I graduated senior, I had my same history teacher for 4 years. And he was good at his fucking job.
I lucked out in some cases. Sometimes, you have those teachers that don't give a shit or they don't get paid enough, which is understandable. I see, being my age now, I see why they would act like that. But I did have a couple of history teachers that really were in depth about it, broke it down. Especially, I remember I had one teacher that kind of broke down 9/11. It was actually my 8th grade social studies teacher. And he went into quite a few of the different conspiracy theories surrounding it. And, the whole room, you could cut the tension with a knife. Because a lot of the people in that room, they come from that American patriot background where it's like their parents are like, staunch, like, never forget, POW, MIA type of stuff. They probably, God knows, have Blue Lives Matter stickers all over their fucking cars now.
They basically say, "Don't pull me over, I'm one of you."
Yeah.
I encourage all drug dealers to join the Fraternal Order of Police.
I was about to say,
they don't get pulled over.
Yeah, dude. I remember seeing a post like a bunch of months ago where it was like, "Hey, if you see me driving down the road with a Blue Lives Matter sticker, I don't really support it. I got drugs in my car."
Yeah. And that kind of bothered me a little bit later on because it still sticks around today. It was the belief that cops are end all be all. And like they don't need to be watched. They don't need to be this. I'm just like, really though?
Michael Dowd would like a word with you.
Yeah, a couple of people would like a fucking word with you.
Well, what got me was the glorification of police in New York City following this, because just before that, not even within 20 years, there was, like I said, the Michael Dowd thing, a corrupt New York City police officer that was working in East New York that was robbing drug dealers.
Yeah,
with a whole crew.
And then you had, before that in the 70s, you had the heroin epidemic being taken care of by cops.
Yep.
And even in the 70s and 80s, the cocaine being moved by Florida police officers to Georgia and South Carolina.
I am so glad you know about that. Very few people know about that.
The cocaine cowboys, man. You got to do what you got to do.
I knew one of them.
Oh, fuck yeah.
Did
he fly a plane from Alabama?
No, what he actually did, he was the dude, he was the connection to the U.S. for the Colombians. He was the guy that would go into the room and talk to the Colombians to buy cocaine for another person, for one of the distributors.
Yeah, that's another wild story we could go down. The
Very
cocaine
much.
Cowboys.
Yeah.
I don't even have to do research. I can remember that shit like the back of my fucking hand.
Shit's fucking awesome.
Going into like Griselda Blanco and all that. And the Ochoas.
Oh my God. The Ochoas were fascinating.
The Ochoas were the shit.
Very progressive organization.
Oh, yeah.
Was it the Ochoas? No, I'm thinking of the... No, it was the Ochoas. Wasn't it they were part of the...
They were the biggest family in cocaine.
That's what I thought, yeah.
And there's actually a conspiracy about the Mexican cartel being involved in 9/11.
Really?
Yes. So the story for that one is very short because there's not enough facts to back it up.
Of course.
But a quick little thing was cartels in Mexico going into more legitimate business practices in North America to have free reign to bring in drugs.
Kind of like what the mob would do.
Yeah. So they would create gambling houses, brothels, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But on a legal end, they would create investment groups because what people don't realize is before 9/11, if you had a private jet, you're not really getting fucking searched.
No, nobody cares.
As long as you're not coming from another country that is an ally. And Mexico's an ally. Mexico's been our ally since probably 1889.
Yeah.
So, because of everything else that it had going on.
Yeah. Even following the Mexican Revolution, too.
Yeah. So, but yeah, that's just, the plain Jane conspiracy of them trying to be legit in the World Trade Center, kind of nudging them out on the world stage
Oh, shit.
Because they were trying to skip the whole, what do you call it? Stock options. They were going to create an investment company and try to fast track it to investment instead of doing it the proper way, which is build the company and then create stock.
Oh shit! So they were doing it. They were
fast tracking.
Yeah.
But it was all under the guise of trying to get drugs back into the United States faster, without having to search. Because if it's a conglomerate, you're not really going to search a conglomerate that bad. You're not going to go deep in their details because there's no reason to.
Now, with how does, out of curiosity, how does George Bush kind of come into this? Because I know there's further connections other than, Bush did 9/11.
So the Bush family, have you ever heard of Prescott Bush?
I am familiar with the name. I didn't really look that much into him.
So you have George W. Bush, and you have George Herbert Walker Bush, former head of the CIA.
Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun. Vice President Ronald Reagan, big in politics on the right side, a very conservative man.
Yes.
His father, however, is named Prescott Bush. Fun story about Prescott Bush. He was part of a cabal of company owners who tried to overthrow FDR.
What?
FDR realized this was happening faster than they could think because he didn't have blood going to his legs. It was all to his brain.
Had nothing better to do.
Nothing better than fuck his cousin and
deal with this shit.
Think about how am I going to get jobs. But when the TVA or when the New Deal was founded, there was a lot of pushback, and there was literally a cabal of military generals and business owners who were like, if we get him out of power, we won't have to deal with this whole TVA bullshit, which was the Tennessee Valley Authority, which is a social, more of a socialist answer to the Depression, which is let's get everybody to work. I don't care what the fuck they're doing. Let's just get them to work.
Give them something.
Yeah, and give them something. Express labor that they can own, because Tennessee Valley Authority built Oak Ridge. They built the Blue Ridge Parkway.
Yeah.
They built a lot of stuff on the East Coast.
Infrastructure. It was all infrastructure.
And the New Deal also worked out west as well, especially in L.A.
Oklahoma, too. Oklahoma really got hit hard with the Dust Bowl. And
and it was all about the practice of agriculture. Let's go into this about a different way other than, those handmade tale, or what does it call it? Those maiden tales of how to grow shit,
Yeah.
Let's just grow as much corn as fucking possible.
We
and
need
let it burn,
all the corn.
and let it burn. It's like, we need wheat. Why? You guys don't make that lot of bread, though.
We need wheat.
Which strips the nutrients of the soil. And that kind of goes into, and just a quick thing about farming, that goes into the book of Leviticus in the Bible that tells you can't rotate crops because it's a sin.
What?
And a lot of these farmers who followed, especially in the Midwest, who followed the Bible to a T, with your Pentecostals and stuff like that, they saw it as a rule from God not to do these things, and they did not do them.
What the fuck?
But,
wow.
Even in the Depression, there came out a lot of good stuff along with the bad. But going back to Prescott Bush, part of the New Deal was the kind of freelancing of what is now right to work for a lot of companies. A good example of this is the 13th Amendment, which ended slavery to a point. Except
to either pay a debt or if you are a prisoner.
Yeah, so the New Deal had a provision in it to prevent debtors' prisons. That's what pissed off a lot of companies because there goes a lot of free labor.
Yeah.
So a good example of this is Shawshank Redemption.
Yeah, where they're building the highway.
Yeah, they're building the roads, and he's underbidding everybody because he can.
Because it's free labor.
It's all profit.
Yeah.
He could beat him to death if they bitch about money.
It goes straight to him regardless.
And going into the Prescott Bush, there were these back alley deals made with people like him from FDR, and some of those contributed to the raising of New York because FDR had a big connection to New York City at that time with a lot of old businesses. The Roosevelts themselves had become a more prominent family, almost like American royalty, like the Kennedys. And Prescott Bush made a back alley deal. He's like, look, we won't kill you and overturn the fucking government if you just add this, this, and this.
Jesus.
And you're talking about a country on the verge of war who've already sanctioned Japan.
Yeah.
And a world war has already started in 1939. So a coup on the American side would really change the viewpoint of the world because there was a lot of interest in not going to World War II, a laissez-faire policy, which was we don't go there.
Because of the First World War being fresh in everybody's
There's no fucking
minds.
reason to.
No, it's not our problem.
And that carries on into the Bush administration, which the Arab Spring for some of those countries had already happened.
Yes.
Which pushed out Western ideas of capitalism. So, and it kind of created a theocracy, especially in places like Iran.
After the Shah got overthrown and the Ayatollah took over.
And then you have, I love this part of it is, Afghanistan after the fall of Russian society had went back to a religious theology.
Yes.
And a good example of this is a book I read in college called The Kite Runner, which is about the fall of Afghanistan. Wow, you just
brought back some memories.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
In the beginning of the book, it's about the fall of Afghanistan.
Yeah.
During the turn when religious, Arab Spring had happened.
Yes.
And it goes into the creation of the Taliban into 9/11. But on the 9/11 end, it was all about money. We hear about the stories about how much information before the major digital age was there that burnt up or basically just liquefied because a building fell on top of it. Nowadays, we don't worry about that. But you're talking about credit reports. You're talking about lines of credit run through different banks. And those banks have now lost that information.
Because that was a major commerce center.
Yes, because keeping book, people don't think about this, but before the digital age, everything can be lost. It can be lost now. It's just harder.
It's easier to recover, harder to lose.
Yeah. 500 pounds of paper all filled with documents fit on a fucking flash drive.
Yeah.
Nowadays. So, and you're talking about a tech boom in the United States right after a surplus from the Clinton administration. And we were doing high. We were high on the hog.
Yeah.
But now all the banks are failing because of what happened in World Trade. People don't really think about that, of how dangerous it is to keep everything in one place. And that place was 9/11. It was, the World Trade Center.
Because you had countless different trading companies that worked out of there. New York City itself, Wall Street, big business and commerce hub. As you said, it stopped for 6 days. It shut down. There was no trading.
And it also facilitated the rise of the housing market crash later on. Because so what happens is now you have a country in fear. Okay, think of it like buying a gun from a pawn shop. Okay, when Obama was president, I could buy an AR-15 for $1,000.
Yeah,
because there's a fear that Democrats are going to take the guns away. Donald Trump became president. I went to that same pawn shop, bought that same gun for $500.
I was about to say lower the price.
So it's about fear of a certain group of people, and they drive the commerce of certain things you buy. I've told people before, I don't buy guns just to shoot them. I use them as a commodity because they rise in value, like a car.
Well, also
an older car.
You could even say the same thing though with private military contracting groups. Up until that point, we weren't really utilizing them that much. They were still there. They never were not a thing. But then that's when, following 9/11, is when you saw a surge like Blackwater.
Yes. So, fun story about Blackwater. The former CEO of Blackwater was also the husband of former Secretary of Education under Trump.
I fucking believe it. 100%.
Yeah, she was neat. She was talking. The head of the board of education, the head of the education department in the government said we don't need public schools. So
Jesus Christ! Yeah. Wow.
Fuck yeah. Fuck yeah! I miss the Bush administration.
Oh my god! You know what? I do miss when I used to see W come up to the podium all squinty.
Yes, but I never. At no point did I think George Bush had anything to do with it. At no point. So I'm more of a practical person. I'm not saying I'm better, but I'm just saying that I view it as a more practical issue of, is 9/11 the perfect example of government negligence?
Well, it kind of goes into his grandfather, Prescott Bush, and the cabal that they had. Kind of like I guess a great example. I'll just use this name. The Enclave is what I can call them. They're kind of like the Enclave from Fallout. Yeah. They're all private business owners.
Prescott Bush fucking alien.
I feel like there's all that went on behind the scenes without his knowledge.
And going into like just the presidents themselves from the time of FDR to George Bush, there is a lot of sketchiness.
A lot of sketchiness.
I think it's just because of the amount of information we have.
Yeah.
Another part of this is the lack of the what do you call it? The funneling of information. So now it's kind of hard to funnel information because everyone has a fucking opinion on it.
Everybody's got something to say.
But like in 2001, social media wasn't really a thing.
You had AIM. That was about it.
Yeah. You had blog posts. You had bloggers.
Mm-hmm.
That was the progenitor.
No, and it's pre-MySpace, too. MySpace didn't come for another 4 years.
I miss MySpace.
I do, too.
Remember when you click on someone's profile, music would start playing?
You know how much coding went into that shit? Like, everybody was like...
how to do HTML.
Yeah, I was about to say, everybody was a fucking programmer for HTML.
If you clicked on my profile, Chris Morrison's profile, Cannibal Corpse would play.
That is so fucking cool. Hell yeah.
Those are my 6 friends. I was very sketchy about that. When I first started MySpace, I was just like, I'm not going to be friends with anybody on this fucking website.
Hell no, you never know what you're gonna find.
These are people I got to know like day-to-day basis.
Yeah, like I don't need like 500 people trying to fucking friend request me or.
Shout out to Tom.
Shout out to Tom,
the orchestrator of 9/11. I bet I could make a conspiracy about time from MySpace, create 9/11 to keep people more home and now needing social interaction.
Oh my god! And when he failed, we created Facebook.
Yep. He's on Facebook too. You know that?
Is he really?
Fuck yeah, he is.
Damn, he fucking sold out.
And you know what he says? Goddamn right, I sold out for $850 million.
You know what? That ain't selling out. That's buying in without having to spend your own money.
Fuck yeah, it's like Metallica. Yeah, we sell out. We sell out every fucking night. That's the funniest joke I ever heard a band say.
Dude, I busted out laughing when I heard that. That actually, I will say, Lars Ulrich isn't exactly the best person, but that was funny.
He can't buy his son a new diamond-plated jet ski because I downloaded it from Napster. and put it on CDs and just handed out Master of Puppets. Like,
and you know what's funny? I bet his son probably bought a Megadeth CD.
Yeah. Well, I heard a joke about the West Memphis 3. It's like Damien Echols had Metallica's trust until they realized that he bootlegged the tape of Injustice for All. And I was like, fuck him, let him die.
Fuck him, he did that shit.
He did that shit. All our songs are about Satan. So, like, when I look at 9/11 on a practical, I always have to look at it practically because I love the story of the conspiracy.
Yeah.
A good example of this is there's 2 men in a room. Once the third man shows up, there's a conspiracy that's formed.
Of course. So, it's a gossip. Yeah. Gossip is what it breaks down to.
And I remember hearing all these growing up, and we had spoke about it just briefly when we first started these shows.
Yeah.
About the Inquirer having the real footage of 9/11. And kind of going on to like the legacy of 9/11, a lot of it was the anthrax attacks, the threat levels, threat level orange, threat level yellow.
Yeah.
And I gotta say, I saw the change very fast.
It did. It hit very quick. Depends on your region, but I think across the country, through sheer circumstance, it just hit everybody quick.
Yeah, and I remember a lot of bad things happening in conjunction afterward that people were trying to, add on to it. So one of the things, like, we talk about Iraq, and what's the first person you think of when it comes to Iraq?
Saddam Hussein.
Yes, the greatest dictator
ever, probably
of the modern world, next to probably Vladimir Putin.
Yeah.
But he says he's democratically elected.
Right. It's easy to be democratically elected when you put guns in people's backs.
Hell yeah. Have you heard the story of how he snatched them all up at once?
He pulled a Stalin move?
Oh, he didn't kill them. He snatched them up all at once, smoked a cigar, and said, "There's a traitor in this room."
Oh, you're talking about
Saddam.
Saddam. Yes, no, he did kill them. He killed them outside of the fucking the parliament.
But no, he was watching. They were all turning on each other.
Yeah,
fucking.
They would all rat each other out in order to survive. Yeah, that was I remember. I actually just watched a documentary of that scene too.
Yeah. There's a great documentary on Netflix called "How to Be a Dictator."
Yep, that's exactly what I'm referencing. Yeah, I loved that fucking shit, dude.
He's like, "You're good, but are you Uday Hussein good?" I'm just like, "Fucking Uday Hussein, man, the devil's double."
Dude, he's scared. Like, even just seeing the footage, not even being physically present there, I felt scared seeing him just light up a cigar and smile and watching then say
each other.
Yeah, just like, oh yeah, they're all gonna fucking flip.
But like going into like the aftermath of 9/11, so the attacks happen. This is also going. So September is also the time of football and baseball.
Yes.
I remember the football games starting the tail end of August into September.
Yes.
And here's where a conspiracy I think is kind of fucked up. The Pats winning the Super Bowl was because of 9/11.
Yeah, of course. Because I mean,
they weren't that good.
No.
Tom Brady was kind of a lanky dude.
Bill Belichick is essentially a robot. That's a conspiracy.
But like,
in a sweatshirt.
Yeah, he's from Alabama. He coached in Alabama at one time.
Allegedly.
But that was the biggest conspiracy I think about 9/11. It's just a sporting event going terribly wrong.
Dude,
the
you're not wrong.
The whole fucking thing. And then the dynasty of the Patriots.
Well, also what really came out from the ashes of 9/11 too. Look at all the American flag T-shirts and the American flag sales, and
I just thought about a Dynasty of the Patriots would be a badass metal band.
Dynasty of the Patriots. We're a libertarian metal band.
No, it's just a picture of George Washington just killing a fucking bear
with his bare hands.
And it's got like a commie sigil on its side, and it's just like
it's got a bald eagle on his shoulder.
Just a song called "My Money, Your Money, Fuck Your Money."
Only good commies, a dead commie.
Yeah. And like there's just a fabricated intro from inside every good communist is an American trying to get out.
Oh my God, just sampling Full Metal Jacket.
Commies don't believe in Jesus.
Charlie don't surf.
Yeah, Charlie don't surf.
We're gonna fucking blend both of these.
Yeah, fuck it. Stanley Kubrick, you're fucked up. You dead piece of shit. But I think what's weird about the whole conspiracy of 9/11 is the legacy it leaves behind. Because growing up, even in 2008 when I graduated high school, we didn't talk about 9/11. It was just a holiday.
What?
It was a thing that we, like a moment of silence. There was a reverence, and that was it.
Oh, dude, it was a moment.
Down here, when people outside of the rural north, past Pennsylvania, most people I've talked to who are from North and South Carolina, Tennessee, and stuff like that, they didn't do shit.
No,
they didn't have to.
No, of course not. It's not affecting them.
There was like a moment of silence for like 30 minutes, and we went outside in 7th grade.
Yeah,
8th grade. I don't remember us doing anything.
We only had a moment of silence, but it was like 2 minutes. Yeah. It was never for both towers. It's kind of how they were trying to put it in a poetic way. Yeah. But that was really it down here, at least.
Yeah. Then we have the invasion of Iraq, 2003.
My cousin, the same one I was telling you about that was in the Marines, was in the invasion of Iraq. He fought in Fallujah.
No shit.
Yeah.
I know a couple of guys who were over there when they invaded one of his palaces.
Yeah.
And they found all the videotapes and nickel-plated fucking AKs and shit.
Of course.
And I kind of glanced over this, and I didn't know if I wanted to mention it or not. There was a guy named Kurt Sonnefeld. Have you ever heard of Kurt Sonnefeld?
I've heard the name, yes.
So Kurt Sonnefeld said he was a part of FEMA during 9/11. And at that time, no one had really heard about FEMA until Katrina came years later. And that goes into another conspiracy of the FEMA camps, New World Order, all that shit. Yeah. Yeah, just say you hate Jews.
Yeah, just
that's the one thing I'll say to any conspiracy theorist. If you don't like Jews, just fucking say it.
Because you're telling on yourself by just going on these crackpot fucking theories.
Yeah, and it comes about, like, I'd like to break it up. There's the show Justified. Have you ever seen it?
Yes.
Yeah, so there's a point in the first episode where he's talking to his old friend, the hillbilly who still lives in Kentucky. Yeah. And he's a Nazi, and he's a fucking marshal. The other guy was marshal.
That's right.
And he's talking to his friend in a dilapidated church filled with Nazi memorabilia, and they're both sitting together adjacent from some pews. And he just turns around. He's like, "Man, do you fucking know any Jews?" And it's just like it's a good little thing when people start bringing in the Zionist run government. And Holocaust.
And it's like, have you ever met a Jewish person in your life? Yeah. 9 times out of 10, they'll tell you no.
Yeah, and it's just like they're part of the bigger conspiracy of 9/11, and that kind of added to, which I thought was funny, is like, okay, so your logic is the Jews caused 9/11, however, it was 19 Arab guys
of the Islamic faith that carried it out.
Yeah, but you're saying, like, because everybody knows the Jews and Muslims are like tight.
Yeah, the history of Israel really spills that well.
Yeah, and that kind of goes into like what the Taliban and Al Qaeda ended up saying why they did it was the occupation of American forces in Muslim countries. Yeah, and actually, one of the other reasons was I kind of thought this was odd. I had to read up about it, but Chechnya and how they treated their Muslims was this big support from the United States. Yes, about driving them out of their area. Yes. Which, that is one thing we don't talk about much about the Clinton administration and about the foreign policy. It was very laissez-faire.
Mm-hmm.
Let them deal with their own shit.
Yeah.
Which is kind of a conservative viewpoint nowadays.
Yes, very much.
But you use it to gain assets when you do help invade other countries. As of right now, Ukraine is using American military stuff.
Yeah, it's a proxy war.
Because we need what they have.
Yeah.
And they have stuff.
Yeah. They have stuff that we have. We don't have that stuff. We need that stuff.
Yeah, and we need them to kind of put our second biggest enemy to their knees. So that's a good way to do it.
It's a power move.
In a proxy war, this isn't the first time we've won a proxy war, but not the first time we might lose either. So
yeah,
the only difference is we're not flying Hueys into the fucking into the sunflower patch of Kiev.
Unfortunate Son is no longer a hit.
Fuck no, it's ball with the ball.
It's Kid Rock. You know what? I could hear that shit.
Ball with the ball, the bang.
It's the Ukrainians.
Yeah, just an American tanker. Listen to fucking Country Grammar by Nelly. Boom! Country Grammar.
I hear 50 Cent too, fucking in the club mix.
Welcome to the club. And just slaughtering a whole platoon. Yeah.
Oh my god.
All the girls getting tips. And so, which conspiracy do you think kind of holds the biggest truth, holds the biggest water? Is it the lack of government? The government was part of it? Because, Dick Cheney, they were actually... The movie Vice kind of covers this because they stated in the movie that, hey, this was an eyewitness account that we pulled this from, was Dick Cheney had because Dick Cheney was still at the White House.
Yeah. And
he said he had authorized the shoot down of any airliner that was still in the air after a certain point. And, as fast as, Canada, Europe, and the United States, grounding that many flights. And I remember being very quiet when I got home because I lived near a municipal airport when I grew up, a small little private jet airport.
Yeah.
And they would fly right above my house, and I remember it's really quiet for the next few days here, and because you just get so used to the sound, kind of like sirens and gunshots and shit in the city. You just get used to it.
Yeah, of course.
And I'm like, man, you notice the quiet before you notice the noise.
Yes. So the quietest moments are always the most tense.
And I think what creates the great conspiracy of 9/11 is the sum of parts of how everything was done. Okay, 4 planes were hijacked, 3 of the targets were hit, and the 4th plane may or may not have targeted the White House. Okay, not a big deal. Those are the facts. They were able to ground all planes over the United States within 4 hours.
Yeah, about 4 hours.
After the second tower was hit.
Yeah.
4 hours. You're able to ground that many planes that quickly.
Thousands.
And on not just that, on 9/11, it was clear skies across the United States.
Yeah. Not
a fucking cloud in the sky. Across
the
whole United States. That adds to the conspiracy, a victim of circumstance kind of thing. When we tell stories of conspiracy, one of my favorite is, why don't we see the wings from the Pentagon plane hit? Because they detach. They come off as soon as they hit the ground.
Yeah.
People don't realize that's what a 757 is designed to do. Is to break apart and become a human missile canister.
Yeah.
so it can roll.
Yeah.
If it can roll, it can stay in peace.
That's why it's tube shaped, and 747s, it's a fail safe, because if they have to crash land, God forbid, the rest of the fuselage isn't going to blow up.
Yeah. And we all know that every transponder was taken off. So they knew what they were doing on their end. They were educated enough to hijack a plane. Now, were they able to do it this way? And I always hear people say, "Oh, if I was on that plane, I would have kicked his ass." Mark Wahlberg had said that one time. He said, "If I was on one of those planes, 9/11 never would have happened." I'm just like, shut the fuck up.
You would shit your fucking pants. Yeah. Being in that situation, I don't think any of us know how we would respond.
I think people could nowadays maybe do it.
Because, there's something that happened.
Well, there's a desensitization to violence, too.
That's always been rooted.
If you just glance online, people are very cavalier on how they want to approach people, which is like
just shooting them.
As me to you from your mic. It's like, I can get that close to you. And I think that's the one thing that 9/11 had kind of facilitated in the change was people's ideas of, I could get closer if I wanted to. because that's we've become a more survival state than
Very
anything.
much, yeah. And I feel like really what it boils down to is I feel like there was pieces of government that knew what was going on, that had some kind of hand in it, but I also think there was other parts of government that were totally oblivious, like how Bush just kind of seemed like in total shock that even fucking happened.
Yeah, and that's another part. I don't think George Bush was really involved in the let's say the government did do it. I don't believe he
had any hand. Yeah,
when I was being fed information that had nothing to do with a potential attack. A great example of this is I was chosen to lead, not to read.
Yeah, from the Simpsons movie.
Yeah, it was like that's in there in the policy of the George Bush. He wasn't there to make policy. He was there to represent the Republican Party as just another win.
Dick Cheney was the greatest American president.
Yeah, but and going into the conspiracy of that kind of adds to 9/11. Did Dick Cheney orchestrate a false flag attack to take over the United States to hide George Bush?
Did he still have his connections as
Halliburton?
Yeah. Well, that would make a lot of sense. I mean,
that's what people don't understand is when you become president, you have to get rid of your business when you become a president. Yeah. Jimmy Carter gave up his peanut farm.
Yep,
that's a fact. Reagan didn't have any businesses. He had businesses later on.
He was just an actor before then,
and he was
governor.
older, so he didn't need it.
Of course.
Bill Clinton didn't have any businesses on the slide except for the Clinton Foundation, which came up after he got let go, after he became non-presidential, a former president. So there's a lot of give and take on did it benefit George Bush in a way, and it benefited Dick Cheney more,
of course,
because Halliburton was the one chosen to go into Iraq, go into Afghanistan, and secure high asset targets such as the poppy fields of northern Afghanistan, certain oil right districts on the border of Afghanistan.
Yep.
And try to facilitate just another version of Desert Storm because of the belief, okay, yeah, we can definitely take this down. And you can't, because it's not exactly a metropolitan country.
Yeah.
And the thing about Afghanistan was the mountains, the caves, the deserts, the fields, and how separated they are from the world itself.
Very locked, both in physical form and in cultural form.
Yeah, so you got guys who are training even up into 2008, 2010, rolling up on some farmers in Afghanistan.
They're like, what the fuck is this?
Well, they're just like, I don't know what 9/11 is.
Yeah, like, what are you doing here?
I didn't know you guys were here.
Until right now.
Yeah, so there's a lot of cultural shock on that too.
Yeah.
Unlike, Vietnam, which is, just a giant S-shaped country who's very close to each other when it comes to cities and villages.
Yeah.
So
people talk.
And the invasion of two major countries, China and the United States. Yeah, you're going to notice something like that. But when it comes to the United States, not so much. It's going to be a lot of inner city stuff, a lot of house to house.
It's the next neighborhood's problem. It's not my problem. Yeah, it's one of those things.
Yeah. And going back to the guy, Kurt Sonnenfeld, I was talking about, Kurt Sonnenfeld had worked for FEMA, and he had said he had proof that George Bush was part of 9/11, or the Bush administration. And it was a very ballsy thing to say. However, he had fled to Argentina because his wife supposedly killed herself.
My God.
He was questioned and then fled the country to a non-extraditional country of Argentina. And now he's wanted for murder of his wife. And
wow.
There is a rumor that he had something to do with the movie Loose Change, when they made like a version 2 of it. Because he had a camera after the wreckage, and he'd gone in and noticed that, hey, where the safes were, everything was cleaned out.
Holy shit.
Which is not really I don't see that as a conspiracy, more as
saving assets.
If you understand about, saving assets, in September is the end of the quarter.
Yes,
so
it is.
It's the end of the third quarter, so there's no reason to keep those there when you're going to have another 3 months of documents in that same safe.
Yeah.
So that's where I kind of dissolve the conspiracy, just looking at it as, okay, these guys were just being fiscally responsible and getting all the
they were
records
just
out.
doing their job.
Yeah,
in
they
other
had
words,
no idea 9/11 was going to happen. You know,
that's why I kind of say I feel like it was certain branches of government. I feel like Dick Cheney might have had certain individuals in his pocket, more or less, that could do stuff off the books. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's kind of like the best way to describe it would be kind of like it. I hate to say it this way, but it makes sense. It's like organized crime. You know, you have a boss, you have an underboss, and then you have captains, and then you have their crews.
Yeah.
Now, the boss calls all the shots, tells everybody what the policy is going to be. I mean, this could work in corporations too. The underboss is going to send that message down, or just make sure shit on the street's handled.
Yeah.
Now, the captains can choose to listen to him or not. You know, it comes with consequence, but that's if they find out.
Yeah.
Now, boss might say A, but the underboss takes you aside and goes, "Don't listen to what he says. He's a fucking idiot. Listen to me, because he's on his way out."
And I kind of see that with the Bush administration, because the way Dick Cheney ran everything.
Oh, yeah, it was like the body language, too, even in the both of them. Like, Cheney always was staring daggers into him, especially when he was addressing the House of Representatives and the Senate. He was just looking at him like, what the fuck?
Yeah. And every time I think of Dick Cheney, I think of Revenge of the Sith.
Why Revenge of the Sith?
Do it. I'm just like, God damn it, that's the same fucking thing.
So George Bush is fucking Darth Vader.
Kinda.
That's awesome. Oh my god.
I don't want to go on a binge with that motherfucker. That dude partied hard in Harvard as a cheerleader.
Jesus Christ.
That dude was in the fucking United Air National Guard of Texas, preventing Texas from being attacked by the Viet Cong.
Good job, Bush.
Hell yeah.
And he's the only person in his family that has a Texas accent.
Yep.
Not even Jeb's got it.
Poor Jeb. Poor Jeb, that poor fucking four-eyed idiot.
He did his best, I think.
just like basically prostituting himself for any Donald Trump base fans.
You think when he visited his parents, his mom just kind of went, "Don't worry, honey. You'll always be my little president."
Yeah.
Is that dumbass here? George, you leave him alone.
And just look at Barbara Bush and been like, you remember when you got in an argument with a cartoon character named Marge? Huh? Do you white-haired hunt? Good.
I feel like George Bush Sr., just before he passed, was just such an asshole to him, like to Jeb Bush, like sitting at Thanksgiving.
Yeah, but
you're not even half the man your brother is, and he's a fucking half moron.
And we'll discuss it on another episode, but the story of George Bush is actually pretty fascinating. How he came to power.
Skull and Bones Society type of stuff, too?
Not really that, more of, hey man, you like chicken wings?
Oh,
and cocaine?
shit. Yeah, yeah.
That's more of the George Bush experience.
The party Bush.
Yeah, that's what Jefferson Airplane changed their name to, the George Bush experience. Jefferson Starship all the way to Jefferson's Bush.
Jefferson's Bush. Move over, Bill Clinton playing saxophone. It's the George Bush experience steamrolling its way through town.
And they play punk. Because he does a fuck ton of cocaine.
We're high on cocaine and chicken wings.
Yeah. Pops over a cold version of Miller Genuine Draft.
Shotguns are like Stone Cold.
Starts saying really fucking weird shit. He's like, you like getting your dick sucked?
Y'all got any Diet Slice?
Yeah, Diet Slice, baby. That's all me. I admitted it. It's the come down drink.
It helps. I'm on like 6 8-balls right now.
And like, if you talk about it, like that's the bag. Can you imagine just let's just say there was negligence across the board. Can you imagine being a president and no more than like 10 months in?
This happens. Oh my god.
Yeah, like,
man, I just thought I was just gonna ride this fucking wave till I got out. I didn't expect all this.
Like, he gets inaugurated on January 20th. It's September 11th.
Like shit. It's like Cheney was gonna like run a few things. I was gonna go to the ranch, you know.
And then, bang. The Patriots win the Super Bowl. Now, what kind of life you want to live, man? And then the Giants got good. It makes sense.
Well, they had motivation. I mean,
get the fuck out of the Meadowlands. Yeah, so that's just that's how I kind of feel about it. I don't feel like there is any conspiracy. I just consider just blatant negligence across the board.
I feel like it can go both ways. That's kind of how I see it. It could either be negligence or there was some people that had a part in it.
I kind of wish that we had actual information of like a conspiracy to go off of.
Yeah.
Just so we could say like, yeah, this is what happened.
That's one thing I noticed, a commonality between all of these is that it has the surface level, like you hit the tip of the iceberg, but once you start going into the water, there's nothing there.
Yeah. And everyone's breaking out their own versions. Like just going back the military had failed to shoot down those planes, which is kind of odd.
Or the military shot them down. It's
the military shot them down. Why did it take so long for the military to shoot down one plane when you had Newport base right there?
Yeah. Like, there's so many...
And they were able to, like, go out further than New York and loop back around.
Yeah, so what the fuck is that?
Why did they not scramble an Air Force? Okay, maybe it was a lazy day.
It's an off day. It's a B day.
It's an off day, yeah. They want to surf. They're over there on all the soldiers at Rockaway Beach, man, trying to get an 8-ball.
I got $20, man. What can I get for $20?
You get a punch in the fucking nuts.
Get the fuck out of here.
Spit on them. Or go into like, did the collapse happen because of demolition charges? Did the Pentagon really get hit by a 757 or a missile? Was Flight 93 shot down? Was Tower 7 collapsed due to demolition experts who had cleared the building out to begin with? The Kurt Sonnenfeld experience investigation, where you kind of just blame pre-knowledge on George Bush.
Yeah.
And the missiles theory, which was they were testing missiles and they had struck prominent targets by accident. That was another one.
That kind of reminds me of your the CIA or the Secret Service accidentally killed Kennedy.
Bump fired and put a round right between his brains.
Oh shit!
My bad.
Oh man, it's my first day.
I'm new.
It's my first day.
Yeah, this is Joe Dirt fucking. I'm new. I don't know what to do. I'm new. Don't kill me. Jesus Christ.
God damn it, Rook. This is the last time they're going to send us a fucking desk clerk with an M16.
God damn it, Bobby. But yeah, so like, as like the one we lived through, the conspiracy that's kind of died down nowadays, because we're 21 years from 9/11 right now.
Wow. Yeah.
Going into it,
yeah.
And all the kids born after 9/11, I understand that, are more Gen Z kids.
They're not really. It happened before their time. It's not a topic of conversation to them.
I'm trying to remember which comic had said it. Dave Chappelle had said it. He's like, when I grew up, they watched the Challenger explode in '96.
Yeah.
And that was just fucking nuts. And his great quote was, you guys are living through the Challenger explosion every fucking day because of the information age.
Yeah.
There's no disaster you're not going to see that's going to impact your life.
Because around that time, it was just the news. It was TV.
Yeah.
That was really it.
But like even in the news in '86, you're not gonna really talk about it. Maybe like the biggest news was, hey, a reactor exploded in fucking Ukraine. Okay. That same year. Now I'll say 1986 was probably the worst year to be alive in the world, just because of the discovery of El Nino with climate change, the Challenger exploding, the Star Wars program ending, and the fucking the missile defense system we use.
Of course.
And
Chernobyl.
Well, that's Ukraine.
Yeah.
Chernobyl, the Challenger, all this stuff happening at once, and God damn it, the fucking Bears won it. Like,
and you know what? You know what? Top it all off. Metallica released Master of Puppets.
Yes. Hell yeah. That poor Eddie Munson kid only had a week to learn that shit, and he didn't have internet. He didn't have tabs or anything.
He just did that shit by ear and sheer force of will, and probably cocaine.
He probably had the power of the devil in him. That's what it was.
Cocaine.
Chrissy, wake up. I love that shit. It's fucking hilarious.
Oh my god, dude.
Well, I think that's where we're going to end it off.
Yep.
Do you have any I usually do final thoughts, but do you have any final thoughts on the conspiracy that is 9/11?
No, I feel like we wrapped that up really well right there.
Yeah. Thanks everybody for listening. Like I said, if you're in the Discord, please just shoot us a message. We now have a sub part of the Discord committed to this. Just let us know what you want to hear, and we'll do the research and get back with you.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
Thank you.